A tēnā koutou. Tuatahi e tika ana ngā mihi ki te kaihanga o ngā me katoa. Nā te timatanga, nā hoki te whakootinga. Nā e puta atu tēnei rangi a tāhua, ne reira kurore ki a ia. Roto i tērā whakaaro e maumahara ana mātou ngā mate huhua te wā o te kaupeko o te tau. Huri ngā whakaaro hoki ki a rātou te whānau parata, te whānau makomik i tēnei wā. Hare tonu ngā mihi aroha ki a rātou. Te kirimate, te whānau e pane ana i tēnei wā. E kui kāli moi mai koe e kei waingani ki peo tātou nei tupuna. Kei rua ko atu. Moi mai te aroha, moi mai i te ringaringa mato te atua. Nei ranga mate haere atu rā. Huri anō ki a tātou te kotahitanga o Ngāti Tōranga Tira, tati awa ki whakarongo tai. Rauko te au ki te tonga e ki ngā hapu. O taki e tai tēnana mai ki tēnei huhuinga mo te ata nei, tēnei taku mihi nunui kia koutou. Kei ngā tai oki, o te iwi tokotoru, ko te tehe ko Diana, nā e whakahaere nei tō tātou nei, hōtaka mo te rangi nei. Koutou, ngā kaiwhiriwhiri o te kaunihera o Kāpiti, ko te tehe anō, ko te mea, Janet, ko te tumu whakarai, Darren, koutou mā e whakapiripiri nei, tēnei taku mihi nunui kia koutou. I have apologies from Rako Tiora, who's unwell, our kaumātua. I've spoken to him this morning. I want to acknowledge that he's unwell and extend our aroha to him. Can I please receive apologies from any other members of Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti who are not able to attend today, and any other attendees who cannot be here? Apologies from Kim Tahiwi, apologies from Kirsten Hapeta. Are there any other apologies? Wait. Okay. Who is that from? Tēnā koe, Diana. Just so that there's a clear understanding about the brief being shared, it was just to acknowledge the creation of all things, regardless of your personal views, your faith, just to acknowledge us being in the presence of a beautiful day, and whoever it is that created it's done a great job. We also want to acknowledge those that have passed, those that are unwell, those that are dwelling in that darkness, sadness, that we uplift them, that we think of them, whether they're known to us or not. We particularly want to acknowledge Colleen Parata, who passed away suddenly last week, and her tangihanga was held at Whakarongotai from Friday last week. And she's buried with her papa, Uncle Manny, at our urupā, Rua Kohatu in Waikanai. So we again extend our aroha to their family as they grieve and mourn her loss. And we extend our encouragement for them to step back into the light, into the real world, into the everyday stuff that we have to attend to. Also wanted to respectfully acknowledge everyone in your various capacities, from our elected members, our CE, our staff that are joining us today, and that we may have a prosperous meeting today, and we've acknowledged those people who are not able to attend today, and I'd like those apologies moved and seconded, please. Can someone move? Chris, seconder. Huri wai. All in favour say aye. I'm going to do my best to follow the agenda. Are there any public speaking Requests for this morning? Item 4 is confirmation of chair and committee members. Prior to this morning's meeting, there has been some consultation between the three iwi regarding matters related to our representation at the table, and there's also been conversation regarding the appointment of a chair for Te Whakaminenga or Kāpiti. I just want to share with the meeting that we have considered whether or not a rotational chair would be respectful and reflective of the long-established confederation relationship between Ngāti Toa and Tatiawa ki Whakarongotai and Ngāti Raukawa. We also considered whether we look at the appointment of a chair and potentially a deputy chair, and that scenario to consider how we might actually look at succession planning. And it's clear in my mind that we have the ability to attract, might I say, at my age with a greyish look, the next generation who are evidence of our work in my time and my generation to promote education, to promote advancement of individual skills and ability. And that's evident now from the complexion that exists within the Confederation, where we do have our next generation, in other words, our children's generation, who are now visible. And I want to respectfully acknowledge Huri Wai. He won't appreciate the light on him, but it is a reflection of the advancement of a long-term development plan of the three iwi to position ourselves where we are actually evidencing succession planning. So I'm going to call on the advice of our three iwi, please to address item 4.1 so we can affirm or confirm those appointments. And you'll find the reference to this on page 5, I see. Am I right? Yeah. Yeah. Kai a koutou te wā. Chris, Denise, Huri Wai.
Sorry. Oh, kia ora tātou. Just, yes, no, just reaffirming those statements that you made before previously relating to the hui that the Art Confederate iwi had to discuss the potential of a rotational chair, a deputy chair, and then just the role of the chair. And then just sort of to formalise that hui, Ngāti Toa moved to put Andre Baker as the chair for Te Whakaminenga.
Tēnā tātou, tēnā nā koe te miki, te chair, te chairmana, tēnā tātou, tēnā koe Huri Wai. Me reo Pākehā. We met last Friday, as Huri Wai had just described, to have a quick catch-up and discuss this amongst other things. And we agreed to appoint Andre as our chair for Te Whakaminenga going forward. We haven't determined a deputy chair, but the discussion is still on the table to determine whether that will be a revolving or rotating role, or whether we'll appoint someone in the near future. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora mai rā. Look, I was at Tangihanga, but I've just had a quick kōrero with Andre, and I too would feel really happy to recommend Andre as chair for Te Whakaminenga. And as the deputy, I think that's a good idea. We could look at a rotational there.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to be involved in the discussion, and quite frankly, I do believe this is an Art Confederation discussion with regards to who chairs. My role as councillor to this committee is separate, I think, from that process. Very happy to support whatever decision is made with regards to the Art Confederation in regards to chairing Te Whakaminenga. Very happy to support Andre in that role.
Yeah, to talk all those comments, I believe this is up to the mana whenua to decide on this position. But yeah, very happy with the suggestions that have been made, and that this korero has happened between the Art Confederation. I think that's really useful. Very happy that that forum is active and making decisions like this. So happy to go with whatever's decided.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Andre, for the opportunity to speak. I'm again would echo the comments from Councillor Halliday and Mayor Holborough about this discussion being an Art Confederation one, but I'm very happy to support the recommendation of Andre as chair. I think, Andre, you hold mana for us, for me, and I think for us as council as we look to build our partnership and our relationship with mana whenua, and look forward to the working on that and the growth of that and the development of that and the maturing of that partnership in this triennium. So, thank you.
A tēnā koutou, mō tōkou tēnei whakautu, e putatu ki tēnei huinga. I guess there's no opportunity not to accept the nomination. And I purposely wanted to ensure that there was comfort around the table, because again, you'll know my view here, is that we've worked diligently to have our rangatira sit alongside elected members, the rangatira of council. So for me, it's personally an important moment for us to make this decision by consensus as well. And I respect the responses from Madam Mayor and our councillors regarding the initiative taken by the Confederation to consult and to consider their views in terms of this appointment. And I feel extremely humbled and extremely honoured that the opportunity presents itself. And I do note that we will continue to consult regarding the ability to have the services of a deputy chair, not only just to stand in, but in my opinion, to create the ability for succession. I think that's a really important element of what we're wanting to do here, and it relies on the recent experiences we've had over time, which is to review the partnership, come back to the table, fresh eyes, reimagine what the relationship and partnership should look like from 2023 on for this triennium. And so I'm respectful of my whanaunga for your confidence and your trust. I will work hard to ensure that that integrity is reflective of your confidence, and I will continue to ensure that there is evidence of our partnership being reflected by having direct engagement through our elected members on all matters that come before Te Whakaminenga or Kāpiti. So I don't know whether staff need to draft up the motion so that we look flash. We look up to them. We look at the moment, and
I think so that these will be good in the minutes.
I think it would be helpful. I think of particular note is Huriwai indicating that the nomination is on behalf of Ngāti Toa. That is a strong signal of support and the note from Ngā Hapu Otaki wanting to second that motion, and unanimously we will have a decision today that will provide identification of the leadership for Te Whakaminenga moving forward.
Like it's impossible to type fast when you have a room full of people looking at you.
Just while we're waiting for that to be formatted, I'll just seek direction regarding the second point to 4.1 is committee members. So my understanding is that there have been confirmation of committee members at this point from Ngāti Toa. If I'm correct, Huriwai, we should be expecting another representative from Ngāti Toa. Am I correct in that statement, or you're not sure? All right. I do know that Whakarongotai has confirmed their mana whenua representatives formally. Ngā Hapu, Denise, can I just check with you in terms of...
So in terms of Ngā Hapu, Kirsten has been nominated attendee in general, with myself and Kim supporting, so Kirsten's otherwise engaged today, preparing for Thursday and Friday.
What can I just then clarify from Democratic Services? What is it that you require at this point? I just don't want to labour this particular item on the agenda if there's further confirmation required.
I think it would be good to have it documented in the minutes, because yes, we did get your letter, but
Yeah.
it's not documented for anyone else.
I
It's just
see.
between you and Darren, really.
Okay.
So if we can just put it in the minutes that this has been the discussion, these are the names, and then
It doesn't need to be a resolution, does it? We're just
No,
going to
no,
reflect it in the
we'll
minutes.
Yeah.
just note it so everyone else is clear who the names are.
Very good.
Is
So,
that all right?
yeah. So what I understand is that today's minutes will reflect those mana whenua representatives across the three iwi that have been notified to council. So we'll have something recorded in these minutes that is clear and visible for everybody to see. If the meeting's comfortable with that, then I just recommend that we go ahead with that. Do we have a written motion that we can note or record?
Oh, no, for the chair.
I think it's important that the motion is reflective of what came out of Huriwai's waha. It was moved by Ngāti Toa. So, yep. I think it's good that we have Huriwai, his full name. The motion, and I'll put it back to you, Huriwai, the motion was that Ngāti Toa nominates.
I think that might be reflected in the minutes.
Can you join the Atiawa together, please, with a small a? Can you read that, Huriwai? Can I suggest nominates and take that out? S on the end of nominate. To be. Mai. Whakaiana rat. Kia ora mai koutou. I'll put the motion moved by Huriwai Paki, seconded by Denise Harpeta, and with the support of Chris Gerritsen. All in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. Kia ora mai tātou. Did you want to say anything? Did you want to say anything?
Kia ora koutou. Firstly, congratulations to the new chair. From staff perspective, looking forward to continuing to build on our relationship with Te Whakaminenga or Kāpiti. This is an important committee for us in the guidance that you are able to provide to council. There are definitely some options for us to continue to build on the relationship and looking to understand the desire of the committee and how best we can provide service to the committee to ensure that we are meeting both your needs and our needs. And I'm optimistic that we continue to grow. I'm sure at times there will be opportunity for further discussion, and that's something that we enter into in an open and honest way. So looking forward to the triennium, really interested in understanding how we can progress our relationship and looking forward to working with you, Chief.
I think just to emphasise the congratulations that the Chief Executive has already expressed, and to note that I just want to echo Darren's comments around the opportunity to work together to continue to grow and deepen the kōrero that happens here at these meetings. I think everybody is on the same page about the fact that what has got us to where we are is not going to get us to where we need to be for the next wee while, and we look forward to working with you to understand your vision for Te Whakaminenga while you are in the chair.
We'll go to confirmation of minutes, which you'll find on page 6, item 5.1. Can I have someone move to confirm those minutes, and then I'm happy to take any alterations or amendments that aren't aligned to agenda items today.
And I'm happy to move the minutes.
Do I have a seconder? Denise,
Tautoko.
are any matters arising?
Oh, sorry, I do have one matter. It's probably more for Democracy Services. I think under the current terms of reference, you need one of each. You need one representative from each iwi to provide a quorum. Because I came in via Zoom at the last meeting, I'm just wondering, does that, or what impact would that have in terms of confirmation of the minutes, or do we need to put in something else to say, noting that this sort of contravenes that section or something? Just looking for guidance on that one.
So normally under the Local Government Act, anyone that attends remotely is now not counted towards quorum for a council meeting. For TWOC, we can take a little bit more of a considered approach, because occasionally it will not be possible for you to attend in person, and holding a meeting is better than not holding a meeting, because it's not the meeting is not under the territorial authority as such. And also there has just been an amendment to the Local Government Act, so at the moment it doesn't even apply for council meetings. So we're quite comfortable for that to be as it is.
Any other questions or comments on that matter? I appreciate the question, Huriwai, because one of the responses that helps to align to the ability to accommodate attendance online is our ability as a confederation to give our authority to one another. And so I think today's minutes should helpfully reflect the advice to us today. So we've got a reference point that will help clarify things for other mana whenua representatives that aren't here today. I appreciate the question and the clarification. Are there any other matters arising from the minutes of the 14th of February? If not, I'll moved by Huriwai, seconded by Denise. All in favour, say aye. Carry. Thank you. I'm just mindful of the agenda, and I'm also mindful that Denise may need to leave us perhaps by around 11:30 at the latest. And I'm also mindful of the time set for this particular meeting. So I want to seek direction from the meeting regarding those agenda items that are in front of us, and to ask if we can prioritise any of the significant agenda items that will benefit from having Denise's attendance and attention. There is a letter that has been drafted and circulated to our Chief Executive and the Mayor this morning. It was drafted yesterday. I'm aware that ngā hapu, Ngāti Tō Tatiawa ki Whakarongotai have been appraised of the matters contained in that letter. I'd like that to sit on the agenda today, and I'd like it to be received, but I'd like it to help inform our meeting this morning on matters that I see referenced here, 6.1, 6.2, and there is another matter that from Tatiawa perspective is outstanding. So I want to seek direction about how we address those matters in our meeting today. There's clearly an expectation from the Confederation that the contents of the letter addressed to the CE and our Mayor will be part of open discussion and debate during the course of today's hui. So I just want to seek some advice and direction on that, please. With the approval of the meeting, there is a letter that does reference 6.1, 6.2, and it also does make reference to 10.2. So it's actually about what efficiencies can we create both at the governance level, which is this level here for us, but where we're also absolutely reliant on securing the operational advice that we contract to our iwi. And so I think it's important that we note from today's meeting, and this is my direction, we received a letter that's addressed to our CE that does reference us needing to provide the qualified expert professional advice at an operational level on matters that are brought before not only this forum, but committees of council. And there's a couple of issues that we've raised regarding our ability to provide that qualified advice to the governors of our iwi that sit at this level, but us securing that qualified professional advice through our operational arms. And there's a couple of matters there that we've raised. One is the ability to progress the items that were referenced in our review that provide for the iwi to have the ability to resource that professional qualified advice through our operational team. So I would just want to note that 6.1, 6.2, and I think the 10.2 references that are contained within the letter that was addressed to our CE, and I'd like the meeting to receive that letter today formally. It has been notified to Ngāti Toa, Ngā Hapu, and I'm seeking the meeting's agreement to use this as a catalyst for us to help identify the governance and operational relationships that are fundamental to us making good decisions at this table and at the table of council and at the table of committees of council.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Steffi's just seeking some clarification. Would you like the letter tabled so that it
Yes, it needs
is
to be tabled.
included in the minutes?
Yeah, I think so.
So we're tabling it.
Again, I'll just seek advice from our Confederation partners. Are you comfortable for the letter to be received today, this week? Yeah, and then it provides for us to actually to discuss those matters that have been brought to the attention of our CE and our me. Ai? Ka pai. Thank you. So, do I direct this to you now, Darren? So I'm going to ask if our CE could respond to us, and it's in my mind that there should be some visibility of what we're referring to, particularly for those other elected members that are in the hui with us this morning. So is it possible to provide a copy, please, of that letter to our elected members that are attending the hui?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. On that point, I've just grabbed a copy of Chris here and had a quick read, but in future I'd appreciate, from a council perspective, information like this as elected official to this committee, to be actually privy to this information as well, so that I can be up to speed in the meeting around discussions. Would be much appreciated. If I can just note that to Dem Services or the CE.
Thank you, Chair. I guess in an ideal world, information coming to hand would be readily available. Circumstances sometimes prevent that from happening, as I'm sure you can appreciate. But certainly, Councillor Halliday, note your comments for any future, I guess, correspondence that's pertinent to these discussions. I'd like to acknowledge the letter received this morning from Atiawa ki Whakarongotai, and coming back to my earlier comment and congratulating you on becoming the chair and understanding the expectation of the committee and how council officers are best placed to serve not just this committee but all committees in council, to ensure that we provide the best information available to be able to make relevant decisions in a timely manner, which is really important for council to be able to continue to operate. I must admit that in reading the background provided in the letter, I am a little concerned to understand some of the delays and the commitment that I've made to Whakaminenga or Kāpiti to ensure that we are able to provide a better level of service, acknowledging the importance of this committee and acknowledging the importance of the relationship that we currently have and how we can grow a better partnership through this triennium and into future triennium. So I acknowledge the letter, understand that there is continuing work to do. The discussions that we have had to date, I would say, have been fruitful, and I'm heartened by those discussions and make a commitment to continue and to progress the recommendations as a matter of priority. Part of the requirement of Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti is, as we're all aware, is to provide that opportunity for review of our committee terms of reference and expectation. And so I'm hopeful that through the review that we will conduct this triennium, we will be better placed to understand those expectations and how we go about delivering against that expectation. So acknowledge the letter and look at how we progress those recommendations.
Can I say something? Through you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations. I'm very happy to have you in that position. As the Deputy Mayor said, you bring mana, you bring institutional and long-term knowledge of our district and our rohe and also our council. So I want to acknowledge receipt of this letter as well. I think there are some very valid points raised in it, also some issues of concern. Councillor Halliday in particular has been very vocal about his concern around the delays in some of this work progressing, and has been not backward in coming forward and expressing that on a number of occasions on your behalf. So rest assured we're aware of some of these historic issues, and I guess the aim is to improve on that, you know, to make sure that we honour our partnership by doing our work in a timely fashion. So I'm certainly committed to that. I'm hearing that the Chief Executive is as well, and things will improve going forward. I make that commitment today. In terms of the concerns raised around the time that's given to consider some of these matters, that's a very legitimate concern. So I'm aware from previously being on this committee 3 terms ago that we needed to bring items to this committee in order for them to be taken away to get advice, also potentially for the Art Confederation Te Hui around some of these issues. So we need to be mindful of that when we set the timelines around our work programs with these items. Certainly a week turnaround to give feedback on an item is not, it's not sufficient time. It's just nowhere near. So I think it's very productive that these concerns have been put in writing and tabled, so they're on the record, and we can address them moving forward through, as the Chief Executive said, the review of the partnership, and also at an operational level through how we set timelines and work programs. So thank you for tabling this today. It's important that we address these issues if we're going to have a positive and productive partnership.
I invite any other comments from our Confederation representatives here this morning.
Tēnā tātou, ki te titiro mai a huri wai me te whanga mai kia au hoi no. Tēnā tātou. Thank you, Andre, and thank you for Darren for your response today. I think it's thinking about ourselves at Ngāha Pūōtaki in terms of the volume of work that washes over us in any 1 week and 2 weeks, and we have a skeleton staff to manage, and this is what we do in our spare time. This is not our full-time work. Our full-time work is in another environment with all of us, including Andre. So we council, I guess, are able to, and I take on board the efforts council make. This is not made in a derogatory, it's a manu enhancing intent in my words here today, but acknowledge the volume that we all have on us and the constant changes that council have to work within, and the constraints on ourselves, our people, and your people in their efforts to do the best they possibly can for our hapori. So just want to acknowledge, the intent and the commitment today to do better. I think ourselves in trying to respond to you, and I speak on behalf of Ngāha Pūōtaki, to ensure that our response is to you in a timely manner too. Trying to find people on the ground and at home that have the capacity to what we call hit the ground running. and cope with demands is challenging, because the people who can do that are scattered all around the country, working in Crown agencies and other spaces, and as we grow them at home, they get picked up very quickly by the ministry agencies, and so we're constantly trying to regrow our people, and it's not happening at the speed we wanted to, but just want to certainly acknowledge mihana ki tō tātou nei whanaunga te atiawa, mo te maia o te whakatakoto o ngā kupu. So what I've said is I want to thank them for the strength and the grace in which they've written the letter, with good intent to ensure that as two partners in an entity here and in an arrangement here, we want to make sure that we're all moving forward at the same pace. And I think we were willing to do that and offer that time to one another and give that time. I think it can happen. So mihana kia koutou, Andre. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora tātou. Just to total all the previous sort of comments that have been raised, and I totally support the response from yourself, Darren, relating to the council's sort of willingness to pick up this workload and progress it. I'm just mostly, out of those 4 recommendations that have been put forward, or the 4 actions that are required for movement, I'm just sort of noting that the first one is, I'm assuming, the most sort of primary one that needs to be sorted out quite urgently, and so just to support the contents of the letter, and then just hoping to see some sort of urgent action. I assume that the other 3 actions we can pick up quite quickly as part of how we actually sort of structure our work program and our terms of reference and our scope of work and that sort of thing. But no, that's it for me. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a couple of observations, if that's all right. As the Mayor's pointed out, I'm not afraid of coming forward as such. But my first point is coming to this triennium, based on my experience from last triennium, I find a very different environment. And I find it a very good environment and a very positive environment. And I am confident in this environment, as I think we've already seen moving into this year, that progress will be made in this area, and I'm very much looking forward to being a part of that. In regards to this particular letter, two concerns, issues I have. We talk about capacity and mana whenua having capacity to work in this space. That was the whole point of funding these roles, and I'm quite surprised to hear that funding hasn't been flowing through, which then makes it a hollow gesture as such. That needs to be sorted out in the soonest, so that there is confidence in regards to moving forward, that people that do put their hand up into a remunerated position are actually remunerated, because I dare say there is opportunity cost and sacrifice times in other areas that's pushed back against us. The other point I wanted to bring up, I noticed here in October 2022 there was a meeting down at Ramaroa with regards to partnership recommendations. That was between ART, the acting CE, and senior leadership. My take on Te Whakaminenga or Kāpiti is there's quite a heavy governance aspect to this committee, if you like, in regards to relationship. As you've talked operationally, there's different relationships from an operations perspective, there's different relationships from a governance perspective. Very surprised not to either see the Mayor at that meeting, or at least 1 or 2 councillors at that meeting as well, because I see our councillor role as a bit of a translation, if you like, or translation point sometimes between operations and community as well, but also means that we can follow up on things as you have some concerns about some things haven't been followed up on here as well. So, but that to me will be addressed as part of the review process, and quite happy for it to be addressed as part of the review process as well, and very much looking forward to that conversation as we move forward.
Tēnā koe, Councillor Halliday. I think the timing of the meeting in October that we're referring to was also at the time of the conclusion of the previous triennium, and it was actually acting CE Gary Simpson that responded to our request formally to come together and meet with the senior leadership team of council. And that's consistent with our review, that we want to have an expert relationship at all levels of council. And there hadn't been an opportunity to come together and to provide an insight to those recommendations that came out of our independent review of the council, similarly to what we were finally able to do with elected members last year, which you attended. So it was really just to ensure that our operational arm could provide insight to what we believe the new working relationship should and could look like. And what's being referred to in the letter is the ability, of course, for all three mana whenua to obtain that critical consultative advice. And it acknowledges that whilst we all have our own talents and our own qualifications and expertise, there are particular areas of work that are delegated to mana whenua to consider that absolutely require us going out and securing our own advice, just as the council does. So it was an opportunity, particularly for Tatiawa ki Whakarongotai, to meet with the senior leadership team, and we acknowledge Gary Simpson's effort to bring that together. Former Mayor Jenny Rowan helped to facilitate that hui. And as I've referred to, beyond that, we then came to this table and were able to formally present our review to the elected members of the Kāpiti Coast District Council. We're extremely grateful for the opportunity that we had last year at Ramarua to provide the senior leadership team of this council first-hand account of those findings of our independent review. And so it does bring us back to the point, where are we now in terms of 2022-2023, being able to activate a partnership that allows for us to seek that external advice for those governors that sit at this table. And there have already been examples that have been noted and brought to the attention of our CE and our Mayor, and importantly our staff, who appreciate that our presence at the table of council is now because of your decision as elected members to allow us to be here. And that does then create the expectation that the advice we can present on behalf of those mana whenua representatives is qualified, is appropriate, is evidence of us having consulted, just as you do. And we're wanting to just bring this take to the table today so that we're not going to be in a reactive environment, which is one of the issues that we raised as part of our review. And I do acknowledge that the machinery of council is not friendly. I know that at a number of levels. And we're absolutely committed to ensure that we are going to come to the table to meet the expectations of ourselves and of council so that we can be better informed and qualified to provide our views and our advice. And it's just about creating the mechanism for that to happen. We are working diligently with our team of experts to ensure that, first of all, they're aware of the matters that council are having to address. But most importantly, we can't continue to try and extract their important, valuable time from other bits of contracts or funding that we secure to function as a mandated iwi organisation. It's just not sustainable. It's not practical. It's not reflective of this partnership. So as soon as that can be addressed, that will not just be of benefit to Tatiawa ki Whakarongotai. That's going to be of benefit to your partnership and your treaty relationship with mana whenua, Māti Toa, Māti Raukawa, albeit Ngā Hapu Otaki and Tatiawa. So I appreciate the conversation, I appreciate the debate. This is not at all to bring doom and gloom to the relationship. It's to remind ourselves of what we think the new reality looks like. What we've been talking about reimagining is now the requirement that we need to meet to turn it into reality. So I thank you for the responses. Are there any other matters concerning the letter, it does reference the waste management item, it does reference the climate action. Again, the advice from our consultants is quite clear that we are not in a position right now really to provide our advice, and that's disappointing for us. It's not like we don't want to engage. It's not like we don't want to provide our qualified advice. We do. It's just about creating the mechanism that allows us to do that. So I'll again seek advice from the meeting regarding particularly those two agenda items. We have staff who are waiting here patiently to address us. I'm seeking direction from the meeting whether we proceed with 6.1, 6.2 as is agended. What will be the benefit of that engagement for them and for us?
I think it's still worth, at least for the staff, just to come and update Te Whakaminenga about the items, noting of course that Te Atiawa have put in their position and noting that those particular agenda items are mostly noting papers, and not so much sort of seeking to approve. I think the last sort of recommendations is just more of a sort of confirm sort of what approach or option there might be. I think that there's still value in the staff just coming to note their what their papers are about, and then we could look to say, okay, we can't come with a final position on all of your recommendations, but here's sort of, thank you for the update, and here's sort of where we're generally thinking about, even though it might not be sufficient enough to progress meaningfully. I think it's useful to at least have the conversation to start it.
Kia ora koe. Pihana o koutou nei whakaaro.
Tēnā koe, Andre. Chair, tēnā tātou. Tautoko ngā kupa ahuriwai. I think there's we haven't had a chance to share this amongst our pautai, our team in Ngā Hapu, who are heavily laden with other matters, but I think it's good for us to be able to know what exactly the council's sort of steer is, and so that we can take that back and share that with them within the next 7 days and then respond. I think there's a couple of other things there, including the 3 items there, Andre. I said that's all we're talking about at the moment, but I'm looking at the list of agenda items, and there's some other important ones further down the line in the agenda. So e tautoko ana kia to hear our people here that are sitting here to present to us today. Tēnā tātou.
I'd just like to tautoko what our toa and otake or Rakawa have stated. I agree too that we're here to hear them. You know, they pay the homage and listen to us, so I think we can do the same and listen to what they have to say as well. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe. Thank you for the direction. I'm going to labour this as your chair, so I'm satisfied that the chair isn't just taking the liberty of directing things here. So it might delay moving our meeting along, but I want to be very clear about the intent that's shared by all of us that are sitting at the table. So I appreciate. Were you going to provide a comment or advice as well, Lawrence? No. Then can I invite our agenda item 6.1, and we'll go into 6.2. And thank you to our staff for your patience. And can I just perhaps suggest as well that we're absolutely in your hands in terms of advice or response that you might feel you need to provide given the discussion we've just had. I'm very comfortable for us to be addressing things at the moment, and so this matter that we've just discussed may not have been advised to you, but I'm very comfortable for you to take the lead and to provide some advice and direction to us given the conversation that we've just had, and appreciate your work on these matters.
Is it working? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Ninka Ichisos toko ingoa. I'm the Sustainability and Resilience Manager for the Council. very shortly, my team manages everything waste minimization, everything climate change, and a bit of emergency management. And I have with me here Robbie.
Tēnā koutou, ko Robbie Stillwell, tōku ingoa. I'm the Waste Projects Manager here at Kāpiti Council.
And in the back, Rob will come up a little bit later. In light of the previous discussion, I can confirm that these both can be seen as noting papers for information. It is really a bit based on how we worked in the past, to be honest, the past triennium and previous triennium. If we have had matters that concerned waste or waste minimization, the Otahanga landfill in particular, but also the strategic level, this is our waste strategy. This is Council's waste strategy. We're talking about the WMMP in short, or matters that concern the climate. It would be discussed to go to Whakaminenga to usually provide some slides and have a discussion as a form of an update and a more informal discussion. When we discussed this time around, we were asked to produce reports, and the advantage, of course, is that they're provided with the agenda so that members can actually read about it before we turn up. Because that's the disadvantage of doing a briefing, that people often don't have enough background and then there's not much discussion. So it was really to provide an update of where we are in a project where we have been learning and working with iwi in the past, and we have had feedback that they are interested. But for the WMP, we're also working at the operational level because it's a large project, and we're working with liaison officers, and we have had contact with all the units of the three iwi here that we work with. For Rob's development of a draft new policy, because that funding was only approved at the end of January, and it's an operational budget that we want to spend this financial year. There basically wasn't really that much time to have that involvement, but that's why it was planned for a subcommittee meeting that happened 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, it wasn't discussed at the meeting. It will go to the soft meeting on the 6th of April. So that's sort of the background of those two reports. Shall I hand over to Robbie to introduce his paper?
So the paper provides a summary of the last WMMP actions that we completed, actions that weren't actioned at all. Where this project has got to, we're at the stage where we need to develop our local actions. So for that to take place, I guess the big question was, how can we engage on this with our mana whenua partners? I guess that ties into the last item. Yeah. So that was sort of the big question and the options provided as to how we proceed to get some input into the local actions that sort of reflect our community here. Should I take the report as read and get into discussion?
Answer any questions you have.
I'm comfortable that we received the paper, the report as received, and I'm comfortable also to invite discussion and advice on the paper. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair, while he's talking to staff. Just looking at just certain items, so just so I've got the right sense of it, so Wellington region through the WMPP is sort of doing a region-wide sort of move or transition from sort of linear economy thinking for waste to a more circular economy, which is great, sort of aligns with where national government, where sort of central government is going in that space. And then just so I've got it right, so then the local action plans designed to sort of take those sort of regional statements and outcomes and put them into sort of, I guess, make them tangible outcomes at the local level, what they intend to sort of feed into the WMMP?
Sort of the other way around for this one. We're starting with the local actions, and then we'll look at what the regional actions are that sort of eventuate from that. So, for example, say everyone's local action plan will almost definitely have something about education. So the regional goals will sort of be a culmination of those local action plans. So say we're educating a certain number of schools throughout the region. the last WMMP, the regional actions were very separate. There also wasn't really a plan to achieve those. So there's been a much different approach for this one.
If I may, I can add to that. I've been involved with all the WMPs so far. This started in 2012. There was a review in 2017. It's a 6-year legislative review you have to do. A lot of our funding depends on the levy funding we receive from the Ministry for the Environment, and that act requires us to spend the money in alignment with our local action plan. So there's a real important reason for us to have one. So a large portion of that action plan reflects our business as usual. So it funds an FTE waste minimization advisor. It funds our grants levy funds that we do every year. So a lot of it is, if you wish, committed, sort of more than half of it. And then there is room to play where we think of new things we want to deliver, things that haven't been delivered so far that we will step up. And then you go to the regional level, because Kāpiti is only a medium council. Often when you talk about infrastructure and large investment, you simply have to pull funding together. So that then becomes the regional action plan. One good example is the development of a regionally consistent waste bylaw, which we have worked on the last triennium, and it was actually a really big achievement, I personally think. And that was adopted in January 2021. So that was co-funded, that process to develop it, and all the engagement that happened, that was co-funded by the councils, and it's now consistent across the region. So that's a good example of the difference, hopefully, between local and regional.
Yeah, no. I think it's a useful sort of transition to go from ground up rather than sort of top-down approach. And then just in terms of time, well, I mean, sort of two parts just before I move on, before I stop my questioning. Just in terms of the options that you got at table 1 on page 15, I think Ngāti Toa is sort of more leaning towards option B insofar as just sort of having its own sort of set of engagement with mana whenua, as well as sort of having that invitation to attend those local action plan workshops, which I'm assuming are for the public, And so there was sort of that part. And I think the second question I had was in terms of timeframes, because I know here on page 14 at paragraphs sort of, I think 15, you've got 2 sort of dates for engagement. And then I think just sort of secret in my head at paragraph 12, you've got it there that you're going to take it to, I think, May the 9th for the climate change subcommittee. So are we trying to wrap this up or sort of get that LAP done before the end of this financial year, or is there some sort of time frame that we're working towards?
There is a time frame. We do need to adopt this WMP in this calendar year, let's say. So we have a bit of leeway. It will be adopted through the joint committee, the regional joint committee that governs this plan, and then through council probably around early October, I'd say. So there is a bit of leeway because it's a big regional project led by Becca as a consultant. There is a time constraint there, but the idea is this goes to, the workshops are conducted at this moment in time, and the 9th of May is actually the 2nd of May, CES. That is a typo, unfortunately.
Just on paragraph 15, to clarify, there was also Becca was leading regional huis. So that's what those 2 dates were proposed for on a regional level. So that's sort of unrelated to our local action plan workshops. Obviously, the 31st is this Friday, so that's not going ahead. And there's also been no confirmation about the 14th. I just put that in there in case there'd been invites set out, but we will focus on a local level with our mana whenua.
Thank you for the report. I just want to thank you. Being involved in a place like Taumanuka that is actually making, as staff, we have to compete to be the cleanest and tidiest and you know, so committed to hua parakore. that we have little competitions every week to see who has the better whare. But I just want to share too, because I noticed there's some really good things in here for education and our facilities where we teach our tamariki, you know, in terms of te tiakia, papa tuanuku, and what hua parakore is really about. And I just want to applaud, because I know we have a couple of kohanga in Otaki, a tūro kohanga reo, specifically who are very fiercely protect papa tuanuku and all that they do at their kohanga, and have long refrained from allowing parents to use disposable kope. So that's been a process for them now for about the last 3 or 4 years, where they certainly grow their own food and kai at the kohanga, which the children can eat at will. At will, they eat directly from their marakai. But just want to thank you, because I think there's you know, we've got a little, what we call our golden mile there, but down Te Rauparaha Street where we had 3 kohanga reo, 3 kura. Then around the corner we have Te Wānanga Rauko and another kura and another reo Māori immersion ECE unit, is that we like to share. So we would look forward to, you know, sharing some things with the team, Rob, about, you know, how we could help introduce to our parents. So we've done some evenings in terms of helping our parents work through it. It's a very expensive process for parents to move out of, you know, the use of disposable kope to the alternative method that we're trying to roll out now. But just want to certainly admire what's been proposed in here for Otaki and our whenua, given that our landfill area at Otaki has been there for as long as I've been alive. It's certainly shrunk in size. It's certainly shrunk in size compared to what it used to be, but it's still in very close proximity to our awa in Otaki, and the capacity to infiltrate the arteries that flow, arterial water streams that flow underground. So just want to thank you for that, and we look to community engagement in the near future in Otaki. Tēnā kōrua.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted some clarity. Option 1 talks to a local action plan workshop. I note in my notes in the meeting that we went to in regards to regional forum on this, that Becca had been having issues with engaging with mana whenua. Is this in response to that?
Yes, you could say.
Yes.
Okay, so potentially from clarity, potentially from perspective of mana whenua, Becca had brought up at the regional meeting that they'd been having issues with regards to moving forwards in some decision making. One of the suggestions one of the directions that came from is that we need to go to their whare rather than expecting mana whenua to come to us as such. So I dare say this is a way that Becca is potentially reaching out to local mana whenua as such in an expedient way. I'm going to get some clarity on this.
Becca have basically handed over mana whenua engagement to each individual council for us to lead.
Really?
Yeah, it has been unsuccessful.
Which is hence the tight time frames.
Hence the tight time frames.
Okay. Relatively rushed approach, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that's the reasoning behind why this is. So this is an opportunity, I dare say, for mana whenua to feed into this process as such. But
I have to clarify that the 3 units of the 3 iwi present here have been emailed about this months ago. So in the email sphere, the liaison officers, we have brought this to the table. It has been escalated. So there is an awareness. This was just to inform the wider forum as well. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I guess if I was to report back from that meeting, I'll just say that there was a lot of talk around Māori worldview with regards to holistic approaches. I think a very interesting point that I noted was, I'm sorry, this is not a question, that there's a thing called overshoot day with regards to when we start impacting in a negative way on the environment. In other words, the environment can't support us. And I noticed in 1970 it was December, 2021 it was July, currently it's in April. So we're heading in the wrong direction with regards to addressing this as an issue. Denise, it would be great to, one of the issues we have, Council's been doing some good work in this space with regards to our own internal mechanisms, but our challenge is how do we get this conversation out into the community and into the public arena, and how do we talk to getting our community to also get involved in sustainability measures. So any help with regards to areas on that would be fantastic, or some approaches to that would be brilliant. I'd like to voice a concern. I noticed that the product stewardship scheme was something that everyone fully supported, and there's been a U-turn on that with central government with Chris Hipkins. And I would implore mana whenua, if there's any way that you can exert pressure with regards to having that reinstated, would be much appreciated as well. That's my bit. Thank you very much.
Tēnā tātou. I just want to make a response there in terms of Beck, and just to say I'm glad to hear that it's been the process of re-engaging with community has come back to council. We did receive invitations, and they expected us to travel to Primerton to attend meetings in the evening, which I thought was just inappropriate. We did convey that to them. Kia ora.
Any other comments or questions? I do acknowledge that there's been some static in terms of engagement with mana whenua, and the report reflects that. The report also reflects the limited resources, and I appreciate that that's been identified. It does align to the letter that was directed to our CE and our Mayor this morning. So I'm satisfied that at a couple of points there is a clear understanding about perhaps what needs to happen to help, first of all, improve communication between our council and in this case our staff, having direct engagement with mana whenua. I'm mindful that it's been shared with us that you have been in contact with our various consultancy units. The letter today clearly outlines that our tile unit are saying they haven't been contacted, and not going to litigate that. What needs to happen is for us to reaffirm who is it that you contact. Who is it that is responsible for tatiawa ki whakarongotai environmental matters? So I guess one of the notes from today's meeting for me is just to ensure, as the chair of tatiawa ki whakarongotai, that we clearly identify and affirm who are those individuals that are our experts, who are our advisors on these matters. And I will be encouraging ngā hapu o Take and Ngāti to do the same. I do appreciate that there are administrative relationships that exist. We have a new administrator right now, and so I'll need to check to make sure that the requests for engagement or communication on a daily basis to our office is reaching the right people. So I'll just ensure that I note that from today's meeting for tatiawa ki whakarongotai. But I do appreciate the clarity from what you've reported today, and it gives us some goals that we need to set or reset in terms of how do we engage at the local level, and obviously we're continually having to manage our relationships at a regional level as well as central government. I appreciate the advice and the consultation from our mana whenua representatives and from our Councillor Halliday. I just had a query. I do acknowledge the format for reporting. So respectfully want to acknowledge Robbie as the identified author of the report. I see that the authoriser is our group manager, but is it possible, if we're going to have other staff present and presenting or engaging, to identify them? It may not be practical from time frames, but we've got Rob here, we've got Ninke. And I just think it's helpful to know who is it that's actually going to be supporting not only the authoriser, but the author of the report. Because otherwise I make a little notation here, I don't actually really know who these individuals are, what expertise do you carry, and I'm not saying that to offend you, but it's all about being informed. So we can go back and say to our team today, oh, we had this paper that came before Te Whakaminenga, and these were the officers of staff that presented to us, and this is who they are. This is the role that they occupy, so that we can create that, not formality, that familiarity with one another. So is that something that we could perhaps think about, that we get to the meeting this morning? I've gone and met you all. I have no appreciation for your qualifications or what expertise you bring to our table. And so I want to acknowledge that expertise. I want to acknowledge the advice you provide to us at a governance level and at an operational level. I'm wondering whether we can also, again, I've had this discussion with Steffi. I think in terms of this particular take, it would be helpful if we could see some visibility of timeframes. So perhaps from today's meeting, I note there have been some suggestions of dates for various things. Those are really what provide some obstacles for us at the moment, because we just know that in real time, we're going to be really stretched to respond. Having said that, it would be really helpful if in this conversation, we could start timelining some stuff from today. So it might be that today we've received this paper to bring us up to speed on where things are at. We've identified some of the deficiencies, some of the objectives that have not been met. But I think it would be hugely helpful to us, and particularly again thinking about our external operational arms, to have those dates that have been identified, whether they're cancelled now or whether they're in question, to be forecasting those things so that we can then caucus with our experts and we can then look at how we plan our time around the responses that are being requested by council. More importantly, the council staff that are having to oversee those day-to-day operational activities. Just make another point, I'll probably labouring this a bit as well, but in the tangata whenua reference, I've intimated this to council. I really would like to see our kōrero in there, our narrative, which might mean that future reports might have a number of authors. It might be co-authored, which is where we wanted to go with the review that we conducted. We actually wanted to co-write there. We wanted to be the authors of the paper that came to council, because it was our kōrero that has brought us to the point that we're at. So again, just for staff's advice, I think it's important that tangata whenua item on the reports that come before a committee of council, we're doing our very best to have Ngāti Toa, Tatiawa ki whakarongotai, ngā hapu ōtaki, providing the narrative where possible. And even if it's a matter that may not appear to require a comment or our voice, then maybe that's what it should say. There are no matters for consideration here from Tatiawa perspective, or from ngā hapu perspective. And I'm just sending this out so that mana whenua understand there's an opportunity in terms of the formatting of reports to council, which council officers become very familiar with, for us to have our narrative in there. For one of our representatives, perhaps, who's consulted with our consultants to provide a statement. So 23 in this paper today might actually be a narrative from our consultative process with each other. So I'm encouraging that. which means then you might also want to push for mana whenua representatives to provide that response. And I'm inviting you to do that. If you felt that there would be, there's something significant that's come out of a meeting or exchange of information between the operational arm of council and Tatiawa ki whakarongotai, I think it'd be extremely helpful to have something stated in there in our narrative that reflects that. So that's certainly something that we are going to work on, and I'm just sharing that for the benefit of ngā hapu and for Ngāti Toa. Any other comments or advice? Do we take the paper as read, noting the consultative process that we undertook? We've set ourselves a few objectives. Am I correct? I'm getting a nod, so I'm assuming that that's yes. We're generating more work for our staff to help provide us with some direction. Formally, do we need to move the receipt of this paper? Is that appropriate? Can I ask them for this to be received, and can I ask someone please to move that huriwai? Tēnā koe, seconder. Denise, tēnā kōrua. All in favour say aye. 100 carried. Thank you. Tēnā koe.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Could I just ask for some clarity? I may have missed this as part of the process, but there were some options there as part of that report. The committee's just confirmed the report as received, but there's been no decision around how you want to engage in this moving forward, or does that need to be discussed as just such, depending whether officers need to have an outcome or whatever that might be? As such, I'm just curious to know whether that's appropriate here.
I think my initial response was that both, and I'm saying this as Tatiawa ki whakarongotai councillor, I know we've already made it known quite clearly that there's an intention to develop the opportunity to meet both governance and with operations from Tatiawa ki whakarongotai and staff. And this update, this paper today, for me, will be notified back to our tile unit, clearly with the intention of convening a hui, so that we can get into the greater detail about the relationship stuff, but more importantly, to appreciate the time frames that are referenced in the report to us this morning. And obviously some of those are unrealistic. I'm looking at item 5, suggesting 31 March. Rob's saying, well, that ain't going to go ahead now. So my expectation is from this paper, which obviously has been received by our tile unit, and it's referenced in the letter this morning, will be referred back to our tile unit, and our governance will, I know, will want to be a party to the convening of a meeting with our staff to discuss those matters raised today, which we're not able to progress, but looking to set, if you like, a timetable for those issues that that we've identified, including the options that have been identified in Table 1. I don't know that Tatiawa ki whakarongotai are comfortable to identify either of those options that have been provided today in the report. That's a conversation we'll take back to our tile unit and discuss that with them. But clearly the intention on our part is to convene a hui with council staff that will involve our governance and our professionals. Item 6.2, this is on page 34, Climate Action Grants Allocation Policy.
Thanks. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko tohu toitutanga o Hapuri ahau, ko Rob Dunn toku ingoa. Kia ora, I'm new to council, been here for a few months. Thank you for the chance to present and talk to you today. I think normal procedure is to say take reports as read. I do note earlier comments about capacity, so I'm also open to providing a quick summary of the policy if that would be helpful. Otherwise, I welcome any comments or questions you may have. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Rob. Well, kōrero mai koutou. As is indicated, we received the report opening up the hui for comment and consultation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Andre. Tēnā koe, Rob. Thank you for the report and for the information you've shared with us today. So I've already made a list here for what we're doing. Unfortunately, we meet with our potaia every Monday. So I'll certainly put it on the table for next Monday in terms of the climate change and the activities they might want to be doing or find time to do. What we tend to do in Ngā Hapua is actually work closer with all of our 5 marae, but certainly with all of our educational institutions because of the scope that they get to. So those are the institutions that get out to all the families who live in the hapori, and you just get a greater catchment. So quite often I think about that, and so this is something that we'd like to I'll certainly share with all of our educational institutions in Otaki, because they capture all components and all corners of the community in terms of initiatives they might have. And so we're very happy to support that. And it's not necessarily just for Ngā Hapua Otaki, but it's really things for the hapori. And I would share this with the Otaki Community Board members who we meet with every month. So yeah, that's something, so we really get out to a hapori type. And that's something that we could share with you in terms of our forums that we have in Otaki. You know, that would be an opportunity for you to come and speak to a community group. It's going to be next term now because this, school holidays are almost upon us, so you don't suggest anything to kura at this time of the year and add to their busy agenda, but you can appreciate that. So it's going to be something like, towards the end of April where we can do that. It's just, it is what it is, but certainly I've noted that, and I just want to thank you for the report because interesting. It's something that we're all very passionate about. Tēnā kōrua.
Any other questions or comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just clarity from our Chief Executive, if possible. If I've read this right, this is money that came from the Better Off funding. This is where this is being funded from, is that correct? Yes. Great, just great to see nice prompt action in that space with regards to this. That's awesome.
Again, I think similarly to the previous matters, it will be helpful to capture this work as part of a timetable. And I've noted that the strategy, operations and finance company will be reviewing the policy on the 6th of April. And so the ability for mana whenua to review this beyond today's hui again creates a very short time frame. And again, I'm just making reference to the technical and operational advice that we will rely on to help inform that. And it's referenced again today by our consultants in consultation with us, and I'm saying us as Te Awa ki Whakarongotai, that there hasn't been the time or the resource made available to satisfy ourselves that we can engage with Council on this matter and provide qualified technical and operational advice. So I'm just sharing that with you because it's important that we engage, but it's how we're enabled to do that. That's what's really important. There's also a note reference to a version of the Climate Emergency Action Framework, which our consultants were advised is older than the version online. Again, perhaps what might be helpful from today's meeting is to pull out, extract some of those queries, some of those matters or concerns that have been raised so we can get clarity on that. But that's what's stated, saying that they've reviewed it, and so we're naturally concerned that we're being provided with out-of-date information. So again, that's generating a response to you, and the reality is we need to together to clarify whether that's correct or not. And again, it's just raising the potential for clarity and for efficiency to be created from developing a operational working relationship with one another. Again, I just want to also encourage the reporting where it carries the narrative under tangata whenua to ensure that where we can, we're visible. That there is an opportunity here for the three mana whenua to obtain their advice or to provide some direction, to generate advice within the reporting framework of Council. I think it's an opportunity that we're missing, and I encourage us as we grow and develop our attendance at committees of Council and through to Whakaminenga and Kāpiti to be bold enough to generate our narrative. I think that will greatly enhance the work of our Council staff who are wanting us to have visibility, that are wanting to reference our kupu. When I'm seeing kaitiakitanga, ukaipotanga, wharaungatanga, pūkengatanga, manaakitanga, I'm thinking in my mind, what does that mean if it's a Ngāti Tō reflection? What does that look like if it's a Ngā Hapu reflection? What's the Te Awa ki Whakarongotai will view on that? So I just want to labour the point again. Yeah, I don't have any other comments on Vice Huriwai, and I'll ask for a response.
Oh, no. I mean, I think I was sort of going down a similar vein, but it mostly related to where you've got in the draft policy, as at page 38 of our reports, where it says other considerations. My only kind of feedback I would just sort of either questioning or potentially seek that you remove just that phrasing where it says the use of te reo Māori language, which I think is useful overall, but I think the more important part of what I think this grant is trying to show is the alignment or the thinking that applicants are doing about the second part, which is how they're aligning their application to the te ao Māori concepts as per the sort of mana whenua vision that's in the long-term plan. I think if they said, well, I've said the words kia ora, my name is so-and-so, and then expect points is, I think, sort of away from the point. I think it's more about how they actually sort of show their thinking to those sort of concepts, but also like what Andre was saying before about, in terms of looking at iwi environmental management plans, you know, where that's available, how does that look from a sort of ngā hapu perspective or a Te Aotearoa perspective or Ngāti Toa perspective? But that'd be sort of my only feedback at this point, but no, thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
My apologies if I'm going to stand on any toes with regards to my comments, but I just want to, we're talking about processes, and through you, Mr. Chair, processes with regards to how mana whenua are feeding into the policies and how they're formed as such. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, you just noted that I didn't feel that there was enough time with regards to the ability for mana whenua to engage properly in this process. But I just wanted to point out that councillors are in a very similar situation, and that's just one of the things we have to deal with. And I don't mean it disrespectfully at all, but this piece of work has been done previously and has been brought, and councillors weren't involved in putting this together. This is an operational aspect. It was brought to, I think, a council meeting or the strategy and operations meeting for confirmation as part of that process. And we fed into it there, and mana whenua are sitting at the table at that time. And that's the time that we had to feed into this as well. Is that's not correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was on the agenda for the CES meeting on the 14th of March, and it got bumped off on the day for other matters arising.
Right, so this hasn't been even brought to the council table as such.
It was planned to go to the subcommittee, then to this forum, and then it goes to the 6 April soft meeting for adoption. The reason is the funding was only approved for this early February. It's operational funding, OPEX, which means we're trying to spend that this financial year. And if you're trying to do a grants process, and we have a lot of experience because it's a very similar process to the levy grant process, we're advertising for about 3 weeks. People can put in expressions of interest. We need to look at those. Then people need to pull in a full business case if they ask more than $30,000, and that is a lot of money, so it requires a two-step process. So for us to even make that decision this financial year, we just had to get on with it, to be honest. So we started drafting the policy as soon as Rob came on board, which was 3 days before Christmas. And while we were drafting, we were waiting for the confirmation of the actual budget. And that only happened the 1st of February. So that's why the time frame is unfortunately short. But it is definitely modeled on a process that we have lots of experience with. And we know for certain, because I've been here long enough to know, that all 3 iwis have applied for grants funding on the levy grants funding in the past successfully. And it's a highly similar process.
Cool, lovely. Thank you for that clarity. It wasn't against the timeframes or anything like that. It was just more the amount. I have no impact on the no issue around the timeframes we've got to work on this. From my perspective, we tend to get this on the tail end of stuff with regards to confirmation as such. But thank you for the clarity.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a question. It concerns me a little bit with your statement that you were presented with information that was out of date versus what was online. Could you, I would find it helpful to get where that disconnect has happened, so staff might be able to help with that.
Right at this moment, I cannot answer your question, but I'm sure we will discuss this.
Okay.
You can be assured.
Yeah, that concerns me a little bit.
Just before I go to Madam Mayor, the matters that are referenced in the letter this morning, we'll deal with those individually. So this has been part of the protocol we're wanting to establish already, where if there is a narrative that reflects our view, then my discussions with Democratic Services, my discussion with chairs of committees of council, we will direct that narrative to the appropriate people. So the 2 separate points that are raised today in the letter, we will direct in our language from that letter to those staff so that we can get some clarification around those things.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I made some comments when we were talking about the letter about some of the tight timeframes that are in the paper today, and both of these have somewhat been explained by constraints within the process trying to get decisions out before the end of the financial year, which is often an issue in the first year of the triennium, and a particular issue with receiving our funding from the Better Off program. So I wonder if it would be helpful if there are such time constraints and challenges with rolling out some of these programs, if they could be identified in the paper clearly under issues and potentially under tangata whenua. I know that sometimes when we approve submissions that haven't been run by mana whenua at all, that's clearly stated in the paper, so that if there is an inadequate time frame that's happening, the reasons behind that can be made explicit, and it can also be identified that that's happened. And you know, just for the record as well, I think it might be really helpful.
Any further responses or comments?
Just appreciate the comments around the time frame, and to reassure people that as part of time frame mitigation, if you like, we've got a plan developed with the communications team to notify key stakeholders and partners that this funding grant is coming before the opening date, to help to relieve some of that time pressure constraint. But because it's a new policy, it's a new funding grant, so that the more notice we can give people, the better. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. And again, just reiterating, it will be helpful to us to know who else other than the author of the report is going to be complementing our engagement with each other. So just thank you both for your time and for your advice. I know that, Denise, you are time sensitive here, and so I'm just interested to know exactly what should we prioritise, what should we look at progressing while we still have you, mindful that you're going to need to leave us. And just seek the same direction and advice from the meeting. For me, I think one of the matters that I would appreciate further consultation on through the art forum is item 10.1. I don't see the urgency for us to discuss this today. In fact, the advice I have will be contrary to what has been outlined, and again, it hasn't happened in a friendly time frame. That's just the reality of it. And for those of us that attended council and know this is certainly important because it was raised at the council meeting last week. But again, it helps to emphasise the ability for Te Whakaminenga to manage the reactive environment that we will find ourselves in. And I'm just noting for all of our engagement moving forward, that I think this is, and I know this from experience, is a very difficult relationship to have. Whether we're sitting here as mana whenua representatives, elected members, or staff of council, it's just the reality. But I'm just welcoming advice and direction so we can prioritise those items that are important for today's hui in advance of Denise needing to tend to her early leave.
Look, sorry. Look, I agree that item 10.1, that's really an early heads up for your information, just so that we can get the information rolling out as soon as possible. So there is a time constraint on putting through that piece of work if we want it in time for the next election. But all we've committed to is that we embark on that piece of work during this triennium, is what I understand. So, you know, yeah, but in terms of, more importantly, just in terms of the process, it's heads up early stages, so, yeah.
So there's two elements to that. Those that were attending the council meeting last week will appreciate that this matter was raised, and there was a response to the queries around it. What I really want to bring back to the table for art is the kupu that refer to a Māori ward, and I will continue to challenge the colonial profiling that's unfriendly to us, and it clearly doesn't define us in terms of the partnership, the relationship that we have had with this council since 1994. So, yeah, I'm wanting to respectfully acknowledge that this matter has been brought to our attention directly through the Mayor soon after council met last week, but I'm going to insist that our confederation come together and to start the conversation again about our worldview regarding the promotion of Māori wards. And we will just need to be aware that it will generate responses from across the council and wider. I see a reference to that this morning. But it is about us reconvening as the Art Forum, having a talk about why we chose the position that we took last time, and what's our mature review of this particular take as the Confederation moving forward. Being mindful that council have statutory obligations that need to be met, and we need to be mindful of that, but I'm wanting to stimulate us prioritising a hui with one another, first of all to review where we've got to on this matter, and more importantly, how do we inform that that engagement with council moving forward. Councillor Halliday, we're just talking about item 10.1 on the agenda, and referencing that being consulted on last week, council, and the reference to timeframes again, but more importantly for Art Confederation to take this take away, conduct our own review of this with our people, and to respectfully acknowledge that council have timeframes that need to be met, and we need to be mindful of that.
Could I just respond? So the timing of this communication coming from me isn't a result of the conversation that happened at council last week. It's purely reacting to the legislative requirements and and work that's underway that we have to do. I don't know that I would choose to do it if it was my choice, to be honest, but we have to. I just wanted to say also that I've heard from the councillors and from mana whenua since the start of the term that there is a desire to get in a room and have a kōrero around this and other issues. I was very keen for my councillors to have a little bit more information about our obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We're having that briefing, I think, next week, so that's finally rolled around. It was delayed, unfortunately, because of COVID. The presenter had COVID, and then it was the first time we could find to do it again. So that's why there's been a delay on that. But now that that's upon us, I have requested that staff put their minds to organising in a neutral space, potentially down at Ramaroa building, a hui for us all to sit down and have a conversation and spend a bit of time together.
Kia ora tātou, tēnā Andre. So I've just had a little bit of a reprieve, but just in terms of the items on the agenda, and I guess it's not to sound selfish, but just understanding what, just to understand what our own timetable and timeframes are for us with Ngā Hapu Ōtaki over the next month. We will have a discussion about the Māori ward, and our people have asked to do that, Mr Chair and Madam Mayor, going forward. So we had quite a lengthy discussion about it 2 years ago. So I think that's the process, and we haven't come back with a response to that. So if that could be deferred for whatever length of time, that would be grateful for us. And there's another one, Mr Chair, on the agenda in terms of 10.3. 10.2, I think the Maramataka is for Matariki, kura te kaupapa mo Matariki. So I know that takes some planning, and again, we're into April, May, it should be ready and all pretty much locked in and determined by mid-April. But certainly 10.3 in terms of the heritage funding, Taumanuka and Rangiuru is probably an item that Ngā Hapu are interested in, because at the moment we currently occupy the Ōtaki Health Camp, and there's a lot of work happening out there in terms of establishing a Ngā Hapu Ōtaki operational base out of the Ōtaki Health Camp over the next few months. So that's quite a large change from where we are at the moment. But our team are very busy. And again, I guess we're fortunate that we could call on one of your staff members to give us further information about that going forward at a local hui with Ngā Hapu Ōtaki in terms of what those opportunities are before we advance too much further in that. I think so for that one, Mr Chair, I'm just asking if we could certainly follow your comment during your suite of Chatiawa in terms of being able to go back and have a further discussion about the Māori ward. We did so at our last Hapu meeting last week, but we weren't able to give it, I guess, the robust discussion that we would like to be able to give it. The other one in terms of our treaty settlements, I think, the most expert person is sitting on the other side over there for KCDC in terms of Ngā Hapu, and that would be Deanna. We have had an update, but I think for me, just got, like I say, a pressing agenda items elsewhere this afternoon. I'm not sure what the Māori Economic Development Grants, again, we've read the papers, and we have an opportunity to have, I guess, discussions outside of this forum to advance any of our interests in that, but certainly take pleasure and gratitude in the information that's been shared with us today. And I think that's really it for me. I'd sort of be keen to be excused here now, Mr Chair, unless I've got 20 minutes, so I'm happy to close now and hear if there's anything else, any other discussions we can progress.
Tēnā koe, Denise. Look, I'm going to take us to 6.3. The advice I have from Janice, and just acknowledging Deanna as the kaituhi of this particular report to Te Whakaminenga. I appreciate that. It would be helpful if we could address this today. So can I recommend that we pick up this paper on page 52, 6.3. Kai a koe te wā, Tiena.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Andre, tēnā koe, e tausoko ana nā mihi kua mihia. Tēnā pai ki te kiti a koe, kei runga I te turu, hei upoko mō tēnei rōpū o te kaunihera tēnā koe. Yeah, so congratulations, Andre, on your appointment to the chair of Te Whakaminenga, supported unanimously by Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti. Secondly, thank you for your letter to our tumu whakarai, and for highlighting matters for Council's attention, e mihi ana. Thirdly, and I know I'm speaking out of turn, but I did hear what you said, so I'm taking the opportunity here. So thirdly, as the remaining member of the three-person iwi partnership team recruited in 2020, I'm encouraged and confident that through the matters raised and discussed today as a council officer, and through the recruitment of a GM iwi partnership, that both council and mana whenua will benefit from increased operational capacity, including at a senior level, which will help guide and support a respectful mana enhancing operational relationship between council and mana whenua. And I feel confident that no matter who is in the space, that will allow the relationship to flourish and grow and deepen an almost 30-year relationship between mana whenua and council. So I just wanted to mihi to that and that opportunity. Nō reira, notwithstanding those matters that have been discussed today by Te Whakaminenga and brought to the table for a response and consideration, turning to this kaupapa, the Māori Economic Development Grant is one of a number of existing Te Whakaminenga work program activities, which is funded through this year's Te Whakaminenga work program operational budget. Therefore, in terms of the report, could I ask you to take it as read? And unless there are any questions, could you turn to the recommendations, please? Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair.
The recommendations are on page 52. So we received the report, and then if you see B1 and B2, we have the opportunity to nominate new members to the Māori Economic Development Grants panel for 2022-2025 triennium, and it does provide for one member from each of three mana whenua iwi to be appointed to that panel. It includes an elected member of council and an expert in economic development, or B.2, delegate the task of appointing the panel to the Mayor and Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti Chair to be confirmed retrospectively by Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti at our June meeting in 2023. Can I seek your advice and direction, please, on that particular, those two options under item B of the recommendations?
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair, tēnā koe, Diana, I aua whakamarama. I'd just like to endorse the recommendations and also including B2 in terms of that the confirmation in this respect be received by Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti at the June 2023 hui. Yeah, appreciate the time frame.
Kia ora. Sorry, mine was more of a question. Noting, of course, that the $68,000 needs to be spent within this I'm assuming it's OPEX. I was wondering if there is, in terms of a sort of a fallback, if it's not possible to get this done and that money spent within this current financial year, is there room for local government, or is there room, sorry, for the council to do a sort of a sort of expense transfer to go take it from one financial year to another, or is that not possible?
In very exceptional circumstances.
All right.
But it is, I am reliably informed by my colleagues with accounting degrees, not consistent with our normal financial policies.
Oh, so they don't want to do it, right. No, I'm happy to go with the terms of what Ngā Hapu went for in terms of B2.
Yeah, tautoko, B2 as well. Kia ora.
Denise, can I record your moving of the motion? And Huriwai, second the motion for B.2. I'm just going to labour it now so that perhaps this might just create some efficiency. Is there anyone violently opposed to the remaining recommendations, C, D and E? It would make sense to me that we rely on the movers and the seconders to cover the entirety of those recommendations, including A, if the meeting's comfortable with that. Just invite your comment, advice and direction.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just, in terms of the timeframes that you've got there in paragraph 16, noting, of course, that terms of, go looking first in terms of what you said, Mr. Chair, about the other recommendations. In terms of recommendation D, where it says these are the timeframes for when the fund will be open, does council staff believe that that timeframe would be sufficient enough to get, I guess, helpful enough numbers of applications through, or would there not be was there not a good enough time frame to sort of get the word out there and then pull in applications, that kind of thing?
Through Mr. Chair, tēnā koe Huriwai. So perhaps as a steer, in previous trienniums, Te Whakaminenga have directed us to approach the iwi representatives who sit on the Independent Economic Development Board panel as a first option in terms of arts or iwi panel members. So that's not to suggest that you need to follow that same course of action. And additionally, it has been from that forum that the independent economic expert has been sought in the past. So that is an option that we have followed during previous trienniums. However, and that would allow us to be able to potentially obtain a response in the affirmative or otherwise without having to reach too widely out. And those iwi members have been mandated already by our 3 mana whenua iwi as being suitably qualified economic experts. However, there could be an issue should none of them be available. And I do apologise for the tight time frame. I've actually been away from work for the last 6 weeks following an accident. So this is why we're pushed into such a limited time frame to be able to progress this kaupapa successfully.
Just to add to Deanna's kōrero, in terms of the time frame allowed for the application period, which I think your question might also have touched on, Huriwai, 3 to 4 weeks is a fairly standard application period for us across a range of different grant or funding processes. It's, I think, fairly consistent with the time frame that we've had in the past, noting Deanna's comments that that we are running a little later than what we would ideally like with this kaupapa this year. And certainly we'll make sure that we look at whether or not there are additional steps that we can take to promote the heck out of this one to try and maximise uptake.
Couple of questions, couple of comments. Just in terms of the actual motion that we're looking at, B2, it states there we would have this confirmed as of June. But I note in item 17, there's a reference to 14th of April. And then obviously there are other dates that have been referred to in 16. I'd like to think that there's an ability to confirm the appointments before June. And I'd like to open up some discussion regarding that. And just so that that actual motion, if that's what we're going to adopt, is really clear. Is it June? Is it April? So it should read April, not June. Am I correct?
So what the what that recommendation B2 seeks to do is receive the committee's support for you and the Mayor being able to appoint the panel members to be able to get started with the work, which would be happening in April in terms of the reviewing of the applications and the noting that this would be retrospectively endorsed, I guess, might be a better word than confirmed, which is what is in the resolution, and so that the appointments will be endorsed in retrospect by Te Whakaminenga. And we've put here in June, but I believe there's a Te Whakaminenga meeting scheduled for May, I understand. So certainly if there was a meeting before June, we could bring that back to the committee for retrospective endorsement at that point.
Okay, so thank you, Janice. So I appreciate we're wanting to change the narrative, retrospectively endorsed, and so that we're clear for those that have moved in second this particular motion. Is May realistic if we change it to May, because it says June at the moment? Is May practical from a council perspective, from a Whakaminenga perspective?
Sorry. Yes, no, I mean, I'm comfortable with that insofar as it's clear in my mind that if we're going for option B2 for the appointment, i.e. through yourself as chair and through the mayor to make the appointments, that has to be done sort of very quickly by April, and then it could be either the May or the June meeting, that appointment is retrospectively endorsed. But yes, no, I'm comfortable with how it's put up there. Just noting, of course, from the contents of the paper why that has to be the case. Yeah.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Look, I'm happy to do that. I'd certainly support that. See the logic of it. I think it's achievable by May. So if B2 was reworded, as already mentioned, delegate the task of appointing the panel to the Mayor and Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti to be endorsed in retrospect by Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti at the May Te Wakuri. There's one person on the panel, and essentially we could almost confirm that within 7 days, whether that person will assume the role on the panel.
Are you comfortable with that, Madam Mayor?
I'm just wanting it to be very clear that we need the names according to the paper, by the 14th of April. And I wonder if that should be in the recommendations, just to be blatantly clear. So after, in B, after the word chair, after that comma, or before the comma actually, by 14th April. and then comma, to be retrospectively endorsed in May or June.
Kāpai, that's what I felt uncomfortable about, that date was sitting there. And then noting the comments regarding the remaining elements of what is recommendation A, B2, C, D, E. Are there any other amendments that we need to consider? If not, I'd be happy for the recommendations to be recorded as moved by Huriwai, seconded by Denise, and I'll put the motion. Put the motion, and thank you, Diana, for your mahi on this.
Tēnā koe.
Paper, all in favour say aye. Contrary? Carried. Whakai ana mata. Item 7.1, matters under action, page 56.
Sorry, just through yourself, Mr. Chair. Knowing, of course, in terms of item 7.1, just noting, of course, that the first action point has been resolved. In terms of the second action point, though, is probably we'll be relying on staff, is just to see whether that revised letter of appointment to iwi has been reissued. Yeah. I think that was for them.
Thank you, Huriwai. Yes, we've resolved the first item. The second item, I am advised through Steffi that the narrative of the letter that was received by our individual mana whenua representatives just needed further clarification, because it referred to Te Whakaminenga having speaking rights but not having voting rights. So I guess just in terms of identification of this particular entity, this forum, we also felt it should stand by itself. It should be identified uniquely as a forum that provides for that direct engagement with mana whenua. So my confirmation, if I'm correct, Steffi, that the letter has been amended and has been issued. It's going to be, okay. Yeah, because obviously I can't speak for the mayor. She'd probably be comfortable at times with that. But there was a need to amend the narrative in that letter to those mana whenua members, so that can be formalised. Yeah. And so I think today was to note that they've been reviewed and reissued with the wording. Is there a need to see the wording? Is there an interest to see what amendments have been made to correct or to amend the narrative in those letters that are to be sent to those nominated mana whenua representatives?
Oh, sorry. And then just with that letter, just noting in terms of the last paragraph where it says by signing and returning a copy, I'm just wondering if there's like a little signature block just so that we know where to sign back. Yeah.
There's definitely a nod. There's definitely that can be done. You could perhaps send back your electronic signature, gold lettering or whatever. Kapoi. Thank you, Steffi, for attending to that for us.
Yeah, I think while we're discussing that letter, I'm just seeing a squeak of an opportunity just to thank the people who've put their hands up to fill these positions. It's just been a great start having our mana whenua representatives around the table, holding us to account, helping us make good decisions, and bringing an iwi perspective to our mahi at council. So thank you so much. It's really appreciated.
The third item, perhaps too, can I just suggest that when we're generating our little schedule, whatever, we might need to give it a proper name, I think. This little hotaka. Can we just give some numbers so we can reference, please? Review of the Memorandum of Partnership. There's clearly an inference to that in the letter that's been received this morning as well. And I'm satisfied from the conversations that have started at the commencement of this triennium that there is an intention for mana whenua to review the terms of reference for our Memorandum of Partnership. I think that's entirely consistent with us all needing to review. It's not written here, but it's been talked about already, to review the terms of reference for Te Whakaminenga. I think that goes in hand with us reviewing the partnership. We need to actually look at the terms of reference that determines who Te Whakaminenga or Kāpiti are. So can we just note that as well? And obviously the Memorandum of Partnership is what binds us together formally as treaty partners. And I think that, for me personally, is what should trigger this council and mana whenua challenging central government, challenging regional authorities about our language, our narrative, those words that clearly defined our relationship and our partnership. So I'm looking forward to us having wānanga regarding our Memorandum of Partnership and looking at the terms of reference for Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti.
Yeah, around that, just wondering, when we organise our joint hui, that might be a good opportunity just to share some thoughts around what we'd like to see in our Memorandum of Partnership.
Oh no, sorry. And then just whilst we're on that matter of the review of the partnership, one of the questions in this, more for yourself, Janice, or it might be for Steffi, when we sort of had our hui as art iwi, was more of a technical one insofar as I think we believe that the most recent memorandum is dated as I think 2018, and so there was a question in terms of the review, whether we needed to sort of sign off the old one, then do the review, or whether we just review and then sign it off once it's all squared away. I think because the latter was sort of more our preference to do the review and then we'll just sign it off as it comes.
So, respectfully, I think that collectively you can set your own rules on that. Whatever the table was comfortable with would be the right answer. Certainly, I think it's very important to have a placeholder and a reminder that this is an important document that should be regularly reviewed. But by the same token, we shouldn't treat that as a token or a tick box exercise. And it wasn't reviewed at all last triennium for that reason, because there was an open item on the Te Whakaminenga work program, or at least conversation program, if not with work behind it, to review the partnership. And actually the focus needs to be, the sense of Te Whakaminenga at the time was that the focus needed to be on the conversation, not on the tick the box exercise that says within 6 months there needs to be a piece of paper signed. So I encourage you to feel confident in setting your own rules and ignore that 6 month time frame if that doesn't help push the conversation forward.
Tēnā koe, Councillor Halliday.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted some clarity, I guess, with regards to how this all fits together. so that we're all on the same page as such. I'm just looking at the governance structure at the moment, a council document. So the Memorandum of Partnership Agreement that Mana Whenua has, that's with KCDC, is that correct? With council.
The council, the mayor is the signatory to it on behalf of council.
So is that with governance or is that with council?
It's signed at a governance level.
Right, okay. So because I'm under the impression reading this that Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti is an independent advisory forum which sits outside our governance structure. Is that correct?
Correct. It's established via the Memorandum of Partnership, not by the governance structure.
Right, okay. So in relation to the Memorandum of Understanding, is that a governance document or is that tied into operations?
I want to take some time to choose my words carefully here. The relation, and certainly this is something that Darren may also want to reflect on, but there are several layers to the relationship that is ultimately held at the governance level. There is undeniably an operational aspect, and as you have seen, when those of us that are part of the operational part of the organisation don't get it right, there are sometimes impacts for you at a governance level. So within council, there are elements of our partnership with Mana Whenua that where we must remain tight and in step. That doesn't change the fact that although we have some responsibilities, the ultimate accountability and it sits with the council in terms of the signatory of that memorandum of partnership and as the body that sets direction for us as the organisation.
Lovely, thank you for that clarity, and I'm sure this will be something that will be addressed a bit more through the review process as well. But no, thank you for that.
I appreciate the question as well, Councillor Halliday. And it's because Te Awiki Whakarongotai was directed by our people to review our relationship with the council through Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti. And the direction that was given was that we withdraw. And we did. And it wasn't just based on our people sitting at the table since 1994 at a governance level. I think it was because of the maturity of the relationship that required more than what a governance representative could offer. And that's not at all being critical of those predecessors that have held those positions. I think it became acutely aware to us that in order for us to uphold our relationship with council through Te Whakaminenga, we needed to have the ability to access qualified professional advice. What we were starting to experience was a feeling of discomfort because our representatives who were sitting at the table couldn't provide that response. It was cousin or auntie or uncle who carried the mana of our iwi, but we were in some respects dishonouring them by asking them to attend to matters that they had no qualified ability to answer. And the review that we conducted has repositioned us so that we, as of right, and through the decision of elected members, can sit at the table, but we absolutely need to be able to engage both at a governance level and at an operational level. And I could imagine that there should be Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti hui, where we are accompanied by our experts. Just as council would turn up to Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti with a consultant. We didn't have the ability to access that professional qualified advice at times. And so we wanted to identify that as a deficiency in the developing relationship. And what we're wanting to push today is for us to have that ability to resource that advice. That no longer are we going to have one of our consultants waking at 6:30 in the morning to try and have a paper to this table by 9:30. That's a real-time experience we've had this year already. And we don't want to be in that reactive space because we don't see that servicing the needs of the elected members who provide their time to these forums, nor does that reflectively acknowledge or respect the constituents out there who we all represent, whether it's a person who elected you or whether it's one of our people who elects us. It's disingenuous. So it is about identifying something that we felt needed to be improved. We are now inheriting that responsibility to actually implement the change, to help reimagine what that partnership should look like as governors, as I keep saying, as rangatira that are sitting here elected by the district, and in our case, elected by our takiwa of the district, of those districts we represent. So I'm comfortable that we're having this conversation because at the end of the day, I know how much elected members want to rely on the professional advice that they receive to then make informed decisions based on that. So does mana whenua.
And I appreciate the candid answer there, Andre. I think it all boils down to understandings and developing those understandings as well, which I think from a governance perspective is an area we're looking forward to getting more up to speed with. And I'm sure they'll be part of that process as well.
If I refer to item 4, the last one in our little hōtaka, we're satisfied that that matter, that item is in train. We've got that in hand. Can I then also just clarify that those particular items, if you like, matters under action that have been generated from today's hui will now sit in a hōtaka like this, a schedule like this that can immediately be generated and sent out. So we don't need to wait for the minutes. In fact, what's more urgent for us is to identify those actions that we now need to take back to our iwi, to our consultants, to our board, if you like, and to seek further direction to satisfy ourselves that we are going to allocate time that will also align to the timeframes that we're talking about here today in the various papers that have been received. So thank you for generating this, because this is actually more important right now to have an action list or our hōtaka that clearly identifies and prioritises those matters that have been discussed and require further consultation, or those matters that require us to engage with one another, or those matters that we need to refer on within our own individual mana whenua relationships so we can progress the work at hand. And that then will closely align, in my mind, to timeframes, so that we're cognizant that when we're wanting to talk about the membership, the Memorandum of Partnership Review, there's a timeline that we're working towards. That when we're needing to provide a response back regarding the policy that needs to be activated, there's a time frame. When the mayor and the chair need to caucus with one another and to, generate the information that's needed for that panel appointment, there's a time frame, and that's captured in our matters under action, or what I'm referring to as our hōtaka. Any other points in relating to our matters under action? Thank you, staff, for generating it. I see this being quite an important element of our partnership. And obviously for us, for Tatiawa, this is generated for our tile unit predominantly, so that they're immediately aware of matters that have been discussed, and it gives us what we need to interact with each other, engage with each other, to look at how we set our own time frames to respond to those items that council are requiring input on. Do you need to formalise this in any way? Are we needing to record or note the receipt or the adoption of the...
It would be helpful to pass the very boring recommendation that you noted.
Do we need to do that for a formal motion?
I think so, given that
We
you've
do?
made some changes to it.
All right, I'm getting a yes.
Because you've taken some things off, haven't you?
I'm happy to move that we receive the, what's referring to as matters under action. I think we need to find another name.
Yeah.
Might ask the Anna to have a,
Yeah.
yeah, kai a koe te whakaaro. Well, I'll move. We have a seconder, please. Thank you, Janet. All in favour, say aye. Contrary, carried. Well done. Item 8 is iwi updates. Are there any, I'll just go around our tip. Are there any updates that we need to note or record for today's week? Ngāti Toa. You haven't been doing anything lately?
Nothing that can, I guess, meet the extreme threshold of today's momentous agenda, Mr. Chair. No, so only just that recently those Ngāti Toa members who are on various councils within the Ngāti Toa Rohe have sort of come together just as to sort of start off in a sort of internal conversation about what's happening across councils and then what does that mean for Ngāti Toa across the tribal strategic program priorities and work programs going forward. There seem to be a lot of, I guess, willingness and desire to keep that conversation going and looking to expand that out to our other iwi in the Art Confederation, just to sort of get that alignment and sort of see how we can utilize each other's strengths to sort of gain and lean in and support each other where possible. But no, that seems to be the main thing at the moment.
Perhaps you might find just a small moment of time to generate that narrative. Yeah, is that possible? Not wanting to put too much pressure on you, but again, this is what I think is important, that we're relying on the eyes and ears to pick up our kōrero. I'd like to think that we're capable of generating these things that we wish to record, we wish to share as the mana whenua representatives. So happy if you're able to do that, and perhaps that can simply be generated through to our democratic services. I'm looking to get a nod, and I'm getting a nod. Time 3. That can I ask you to consider doing that? And I'm just asking for all our mana whenua representatives. There can be information that's lost, in the translation of what we're saying, and so I think it's helpful for us to generate our narrative if we can, so that our staff it's then unequivocal. It's not ambiguous in any way what's been reported. Denise, Chris?
Tēnā tātou. Not a lot. I suppose there is a lot, but like Hurua had just said, too much to try and think about at this point in time, but just to pick up where Hurua had just mentioned about the engagement as mana whenua at the regional level. So just today I had to forego a meeting with LTP in terms of having an input into the LTP with the Wellington region to attend today. So such other things that we have to, balance, which is more important. And I came here purely because of the time factor. So it was easier to get to than going into Wellington today. But in saying that those opportunities are there. So yes, as well as trying to do our people service at this forum and in this environment at a local level with council, there were also those tasks that are bestowed upon us and placed upon us at a regional level, and sometimes at a national level when we're working with Crown agencies to try and get the wheels to turn a little bit quicker. But probably say that one of the great meetings we had last week was with your housing team from council, when we met with Peter, Hamish and Laura on the Rangiuru block and progressing the Otaki Community Land Trust to progress that project that's on the table. So yeah, very, very appreciative of that, and that's going to be a great help to our people in Otaki. Tēnā tātou.
Oh, kia ora mai. I would just like to say to the council and to the mayor, coming to that tangi on Friday was something that the family really appreciated, and I think it was an honourable thing to do as well. So thank you so much. Kia ora. That's me, Gus.
Denise, can I perhaps again just press you to just send through what you're comfortable to have recorded under this particular item of the hui? Thank you. This Friday, we will present a submission, and this is all relative to the effort being made to try and protect ka rewarewa. You will be aware of the importance of this in terms of it being a national heritage site, being recognised by the Waitangi Tribunal as a breach of the treaty, resulting from the development of that particular area of our district. And we are in the High Court, and I will send the narrative for this because I want to make sure it's clearly recorded and accurately. But the Waikanai Land Company are wanting to continue in a fairly dismissive manner of our collective efforts to protect any further future development of Tāmiti Place in that particular area. And so we've been navigating that for over a week, and it culminated with a notice, I think on Thursday, that we will be able to present our submission following the Waikanai Land Company this Friday in Otaki. Just recognising that council have recognised the importance of ka rewarewa and have been quite clear from our perspective of the intention not to support any further development. Heritage New Zealand have also supported that, and as I say, the Te Ati Awa Ngāti Awa report from our Waitangi Tribunal hearings also endorsed this historic place that exists in our district. I think that's probably the most urgent and the most significant matter that we are having to confront at the present moment. So as I say, I'll send through the narrative that accurately records our approach and our people's intention to be visible this Friday. We don't know whether the request to move the submission from Kāpiti to Otaki was because there's a view that there's no connection between Tatiawa and Raukawa. It's certainly not the case, and I'll just give notice today. We expect a very strong attendance from Tatiawa ki Whakarongotai, if not Ngāti Toa, to attend the presentation of submission on Friday. The other matter to note is we have had to postpone our hui atau. We've had to just satisfy ourselves that our annual review, our financial review is ready. I'm of advice as of yesterday, auditors, done a pretty good job to help prepare for our annual general meeting. And so we'll set a new date for that, and once that date has been confirmed, we'll notify people of that. So this is the annual general meeting for the mandated iwi organisation for Te Atia Wiki Whakarongotai, the Charitable Trust. And that's where we will receive our annual reports, and we will forecast this next 12-month period and confirm the appointment of new elected trustees. Okay. Denise, how are we going? Yeah. Well, I'm mindful that the scheduling of this hui is till 12:30. I'm going to suggest that we conclude matters at 12:30, and I'm very respectful of the fact that Denise has been generous of her time today. Are there any other matters that we need to note or that we need to action from today's hui that remain on the agenda? I see that we have 10.3, 10.2 we've sort of referred to. There's work to be done there. 10.3 has been mentioned. Correspondence, can I just ask, is there any correspondence in or out that we would need to receive or adopt? Okay. Future agenda requests, can I just perhaps indicate that it shouldn't be left on the shoulders of our staff, or for that matter your chair, to manage the work at hand, eh? Our mahi, as wanting to try and promote here, is inclusive. And so if there are matters outside of our action list or our hōtaka that we need to include or we need to prioritise at the earliest opportunity, can I ask that those matters are identified? And I suspect from the meetings that we all attend, from our own mana whenua entities, there are always matters that are identified. It's about whether this is the correct vehicle for that to be driven through. And so I'm asking our representatives to please give that consideration. What has been highlighted is the importance of timeframes. We're not ever going to be working in a friendly environment in terms of the expectations placed on any of us to get the work done. But at the earliest opportunity, we should be forecasting those things that are significant, those things that are important. And the consistency of coming together will in time generate a working relationship that's respectful of each other's external responsibilities to Whakaminenga and Kāpiti. Janet?
I know Waitangi Day seems like a long way off, but we always leave it too late. So I'd just like to indicate now that I'd like to have that conversation quite early so that we can do something appropriate next year. It doesn't really, just to allow us plenty of time.
We could, from a staff perspective, happy to have that on the agenda for your next meeting, possibly for an initial conversation, and then we could follow up with something more concrete by way of a report at the following meeting, if that suited the committee.
Oh, sorry. And then just to add to that item, just note, of course, next year will be sort of 30 years for the membership. Can that be tied up in that same sort of action item or agenda item?
Yes, it can.
Aroha mai, pātai anō tāku. In terms of the mana whenua position vacancy on the Risk and Insurance Committee, is that still sitting vacant, or has there been confirmation of an appointment?
I have sent out the job description, or what is the job description, because a job description in the traditional sense does not exist. So it's the excerpt from the governance structure and some advice from local government New Zealand for the Art Confederation to consider who they would like to nominate. So an official appointment hasn't been made yet, no.
Kia ora, Steffi. I've got a copy of the document, so thank you. I will forward it to the person we might consider nominating. Yeah.
I'm also mindful that there's conversations going on right now as well about the potential to bring the Confederation together around Matariki. And so I think that's something else that we should be exploring further. I know just even at the tangihanga last week with Cousin Kahu, we talked about the possibility of joining up with Hongoeka, joining up with Takapuai here for Matariki. So can we also just give some thought about, I guess, our own involvement across the Confederation, and notwithstanding that, what does Matariki 2023 look like for this district? Yeah, how might that be explored further in terms of celebrating that particularly important moment in our Maramataka? Thank you for those helpful comments and advice. Te kaumā toru, confirmation of public excluded minutes. Is this a matter that we need some just reminder about or information about, Steffi, perhaps?
So that item is on the agenda in case there were any public excluded items at the previous meeting, and then there were minutes that would have to be confirmed, but as it stands, there are no public excluded items from last meeting. So, yeah.
Any questions around that particular matter that will appear on the agenda? Okay. Well, kua pau ngā kōrero. Have we completed our business for the moment? Just around the table, any other matters? Anything else that any individuals would like to say before I'll ask Cousin Chris to close our hui? Anything else, Denise? Councillor Halliday? Madam Mayor? Huriwai? Darren? Janice? Te rōpū whakahaere. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your patience and your perseverance. It's been a helpful, progressive meeting. Looking forward to the matters under action, schedule, our hōtaka being generated. So kei a koe te wā, Chris. I ask you to close our hui, please, and thank you, everybody. Safe travels.
Kia ora. Kia tau mai tō rongo mai o te wahi ngaro ki runga ki a tātou. Kia hora he te tika te pono, te māramatanga ki runga ki tēnā, ki tēnā. He pai here o te nāka o te tangata, ki a takatū ngā mahi, kei te aroaro. E rongo whakairi ake ki runga tuturu o whiti whakamaua ki a Tīna. Hui e. Kia ora mai rā.